Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a senior full instructor under Dan Inosanto in Jeet Kune and Filipino martial arts. He's a 5th level instructor under Mr. Inosanto in Maphilindo Silat. He's a Ajarn and regional director for World Muay Thai Association under Master Chai Sirisute, full instructor under Sifu Vunak, and an instructor under Larry Hartsell. He has trained a spectrum of students from military and law enforcement to professional athletes, competitive martial artists, and the general public. His organization has branches in several countries and continues to grow, and he founded the Minnesota Cali Group in 1982. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Rick Faye. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Boy, that all makes me sound old.
No, just experienced.
Well, yeah, and thank goodness that we're martial artists, because old is a relative term when you're in martial arts. It's a very good way to grow older is to be in martial arts. So,
that is true.
Yep.
So,
too young.
So what we like to do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know what led to that first spark that led to your interest in martial arts.
Well, there's a couple of them
Okay.
in stages. High school, junior high, we did started in Hapkido, had a judo guy around. We did different things. There was a southern praying mantis guy in Minneapolis. Jinfu Marcus was here. And so there was a legit Chinese grandmaster around. So we dabbled in all of these things through junior high and high school. It was interesting at that time. I just mentioned to you that I'm at my parents' place. When my dad was alive, he really didn't approve of martial art in the early stages.
Okay.
He just didn't like it. He was an old football coach, just thought it was a bunch of kung fu crap. He didn't really buy into it. Now, that changed later. I'll get back to the beginnings, but that changed later when I started working with football players. So I got my first job under Lou Holtz at the University of Minnesota. And now all of a sudden martial art was okay because you're working with football players. That's good.
Nice.
So, yeah, and I love my dad. He was great, but he just kind of understood things differently. So anyways, we did, the beginnings were, like I said, it was Hapkido, it was judo, a little southern praying mantis. I was attracted to Wing Chun right away. And then when I went to college, I went to UMD, there was a Wing Chun guy up there. So I alternated between that and the boxing club, et cetera. Came down, met one of my roommates, et cetera, ran the Taekwondo club.
Okay.
So I would go to Taekwondo, but I was a terrible Taekwondo student because I only wanted to go to sparring days, and they got very annoyed at me.
Nice.
So anyways, so then the next beginning, and the real beginning that I would talk about is one of my training partners went out to the Aspen Academy of Martial Art and met this man, Dan Inosanto. And he came back with his eyes bugged out of his head and just said, "You have got to meet this man." And so there was the first weekend seminar at the Dagerberg Academy in Chicago. And I went, and I mean, short answer here is I was sold. I looked at that and I said, I want to do that. Whatever that is, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny coming into that family. I was not a Bruce Lee fan.
Okay.
So I didn't really, they were B movies. It was kind of cool. I don't know, it didn't affect me the way it affected other people. But once I saw Mr. Inosanto, I was sold. That was the deal. And then the rest of my martial art career, I can honestly say, was directed by him.
Okay.
I chased other people a lot. Sifu Larry Hartsell was the one who introduced me to traveling internationally, and I was his assistant for many years. And Paul Vunak was wonderful to me. And, some of these guys were great, great influences. I had a chance to meet so many people, and we'll talk about that. But Dan Inosanto was the type of instructor and guide. He really lives up to the term guru or Sifu, because he would say, Rick, I think you should go check out this guy, see what you think. And I'd go and there was names like William Chung and Leo Gahi, Sifu Francis Fong. There was all these people, and he would always say the same thing. He said, I think you should go and check out, Bill Wallace, we had a long camp with. And I can think back to all those names, And I did learn something from each one. As I look back at it, I think he predicted what I would learn. He knew what you were going to find. He just sent you over there. Go see this guy and see what you find, So really, that was the beginning. The year would have been, so I went to school, 78.
Okay.
And then I had a lifestyle back then, Brian, that I could literally just follow him around. So I went to weekend seminars everywhere. Then there's a guy, Jay D'Amato, that comes along with what's called the California Academy of Martial Arts. It was in Irvine, California, UC Irvine. Mm-hmm. And he ran camps. And camps back then were 6 weeks.
Wow.
And five days a week, 8 hours a day. And you trained with a variety of different instructors. That's where I met a lot of those people. Mm-hmm. And I think Jay went broke a couple different times doing it, partly because there's not that many people that can take 6 weeks off their life and go out there. But Jay was really a pioneer. He was, integrated everything. I mean, Stephen Hayes was out there. All the different martial arts were there. And he was a Jeet Kune Do fan, so Dan Inosanto was featured prominently. But then so were Bruce Lee's other people. William Chung was there, Hawkins Chung was there. So we had Taki came down, Taki Kimura.
Wow.
There was a bunch of people that were in and out of that place, and that's when I really got a handle on who and what I was involved with. The JKD family was more than I thought it was.
Wow.
And those were the beginnings, and wonderful, wonderful times. I look back, it's like I don't know how old you are, but I look back and I think, I hope I appreciated it. I think I did.
I'm 48, so a little bit between us, but I've been doing this since '84, since I was 10. So.
Oh my, okay. Yeah. So you've been at this a while. Good for you.
A little bit. I mean, I take time off because of family stuff. I don't get to train as often as I'd like to, but I still consider it part of my life. So I want to.
Well, I like to hear that as well, because that's a topic we'll bridge onto, I'm sure. But
definitely,
a lot of martial artists lose the balance, and they don't balance family and whatever, and so that can happen as well.
Exactly. So I want to back up a little bit. Before you met Mr. Inosanto, now those other styles you dabbled in, and did you attain rank in any of those, or was more just kind of like trying it out?
Yeah, but not much. I don't recall. We got sashes in the Southern Praying Mantis. That's how they rank.
Okay.
And I don't recall the colors, actually, because I wanted a black sash.
Okay.
And I think that only because it was really cool looking on the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was only like the third rank up. They went up from there.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I just wanted to buy. So no, I wouldn't say a rank was important in any of those to me. So
okay. And do you remember who was the Taekwondo instructor at the college you were at?
So the head instructor was Moon Kim.
Okay.
From the Twin Cities.
Okay, yeah.
And then Scott Storla ran the club. Brian Seaman was his assistant and was my roommate.
Okay.
And those were guys. They were great to me, really. I was joking a little bit earlier, but it's true. I did pretty much only go to sparring classes.
Right.
And it was a neat setup, especially when I transferred to the U down here, the main U, because the taekwondo room and the boxing room were right next door to each other. You just passed through two doors and they were right next door. Now, at that time, you didn't tell one or the other that you were doing the other thing. So the boxing coach was Bill Kane back then, and his assistant was Jesse Garza. I didn't tell them that I was in the taekwondo room. Mm-hmm. And then vice versa. I didn't tell the taekwondo guys I was going to the boxing room on the other day. So
nice.
You just didn't do that then.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I don't know if they would have disapproved or not, but you just didn't do that.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of Moon Kim. My traditional, or my core system is traditional Taekwondo.
Nice.
I've been doing that since '92. I started in Tang Soo Do. I did Shotokan. I did Aikido. I did American Kempo. I've dabbled in Hapkido and some grappling and boxing, but my core system is traditional Taekwondo. So that's, I always like hearing about that. But
it's a good art. I've talked to people about the traditional Korean systems, and we've got a Kuksuwan group in Cambridge, England.
Nice.
And they're great martial artists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there's been when they did the movement, what was it first? Was it Mid-America, I think? And when June Ree's group went more towards kids and tournaments and all of that stuff, and away from the more traditional look at that art, it was a great move for them, because now you got the whole family involved, everybody. I thought it was great, but I know some of the more combat martial artists look down on it as a little less than what they used to be.
Yeah, they just pretty much see the Olympic stuff and they think that's everything with Taekwondo. I'm like, that's not. You need to see, before you judge it, you need to see a real traditional Taekwondo instructor, because it's not what you think. I mean, my instructor has been blending in other styles as long as I've been with them. We were one of the first schools in the Fargo-Moorhead area to add in grappling back in the early 90s, and he's done stuff with judo, and he's done with boxing and stuff. So it's definitely an effective martial art.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My partner, she's sitting next to me, Linda. She is a black belt in Taekwondo, and that comes in handy.
Nice.
So,
and I have to say, I appreciate one of my biggest pet peeves is people who call it Taekwondo, and I love that you pronounce it correctly. So thank you.
I just remember Munkin. He'd do his little thing, and then he goes, when you do Taekwondo, and the way he said Taekwondo. And I like that. I'll tell you a funny Moon Kim story. It's my favorite Moon Kim story.
Yeah.
Is we had one of the all-star wrestlers came into the school in St. Paul.
Oh, wow.
And he grabs Moon Kim and he picks him up and he goes, "What would you do if I did this?" And Moon Kim grabs his eyelid. And he goes, I just remember him going, "I'd probably grab your eyelid."
Wow.
But he was an athlete. Boy, there was a couple of those guys. He Sang-ro was one. There was a couple of those guys that were really, I've got a couple of my students, Mike Steenson. Those people were real athletes. My partner here, she's quite an athlete. And that was a good system. And yeah, it's just as simple. They could fight.
That's cool.
Do you know who Eric Paulson is?
I do know. I actually reached out to him. I haven't had a reply yet, but I reached out to get him on the episode also on the show. Okay. So
yep.
Fingers
I'll
crossed.
Make that happen. I can make that happen for you.
Appreciate
it.
But
he's coming to teach a camp this week with me. But
cool.
He came to us from Taekwondo here. He was in Bill Miller's group there. Was it Coon Rapids or was it Karate North then?
Okay.
Anyways, but so we've had a long association with that. And I remember I did a thing years ago. And I won't use names because I don't want to insult anybody, but my Thai boxing program, when it was new, they were a little overconfident, they were hard workers, by the way. These guys were really grilling it, but they had gotten to the point where I'm pretty sure they were convinced that they were the only ones working that hard. Well, I asked Storla to bring the fight team over from the Taekwondo. And I said, "I want you to run these guys through your workout." And my Thai boxing group begged me not to have him back.
Wow.
Like, he said, "All right, on the wall, 400 round kicks, 400 side kicks, 400 hook kicks." And it just killed them, And they basically begged me not to do that to them again.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Anyway, I miss those hardcore workouts. I haven't had one of those in a while. It's like, so I think the schools now, some of them at least are afraid to do it because they'll lose students.
Yeah. Oh, and they probably would.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
it's interesting, the evolution of martial art. We've gotten to the place where we use the phrase, "the illusion of hard work is more important than the hard work itself."
Okay.
Because you will chase people away, and other systems had it too. The Shotokan people had it. I've had a good relationship with Fasaro's group and the Shotokan group, and boy, those guys worked their ass off.
Yeah.
I mean, they really worked hard. So that's that kind of thing. I don't think you get away with that anymore.
Right.
I just don't.
Yeah, I remember I did Shotokan in St. Cloud, Minnesota when I was in high school with with Tim Keel. So you might know the name, but yeah, that was a fun. I loved that style, and I remember one of the hardest Taekwondo class I trained with in Brainerd, Minnesota for a summer when I was home from college with Master John Ingham, and he was teaching the class to count in Korean, and they couldn't. I forgot what number that they couldn't get past. So he kept making them start over, and we were doing sit-ups as we were doing it. So I think that day in class, we ended up doing, I think it was 374 sit-ups before we finally got to like 50 in Korean. So yeah, my abs hurt for like 3 weeks after that. So
My partner's nodding.
But I loved it. I
That's
loved it
Korean.
though. And my instructor so many times has said if I taught like I did in the 80s and 90s, I'd have 3 students. So,
yeah.
which is it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Now Brainerd, that would have been correct. Was that one of Sullivan's guys?
No, John Ingham was under the same as my instructor up here, Grandmaster Mu Young Yun. Who's a 10th degree under the Kukiwan. So he brought Taekwondo to Fargo in the early 70s. And then kind of branched out. He has instructors, and he's not around anymore. He's retired now, but his instructors branched out into all over the upper Midwest, Bemidji, all over North Dakota. He had some in St. Cloud, Little Falls, and kind of all over. They've of course, since he retired, it's kind of like the whole Ed Parker, American Kempo thing. They all broke off, and all this political battles and their own systems and stuff. So it's kind of sad when politics gets involved in martial arts. So
it's one of the things I talk about the most in my organization is I've been through so many political battles, and it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. It's all ego. And one thing about being around Mr. Inosanto, you can't be around him more than 4 minutes to figure out that humility is a big part of that man's whole deal.
Okay.
And he's the most humble person I've ever met.
Nice.
And I somehow, at least some of my peers missed that part.
Okay.
So that's probably enough there. So
yeah, no. So and back to Mr. Inosanto, obviously another person I've just been a fan of for such a long time, and I think I met him one time when I lived in California at a tournament. He was there, and I think I might have met him like I shook his hand once in 1995. But other than that, never had a chance to have a conversation with him. But so just thinking back to like when you first met him, when you first started training with him, just walk us through like a typical training session with him. What are some of the stuff? What was some of that experience like?
The way he started is still the way I start.
Okay.
It was always weaponry first.
Nice.
So there's a lot of double stick. There's a lot of explanation of how big the art of Kali is. Mm-hmm. So, there's 12 categories of training, and he would go through, let's say you're training with a single stick, and he would say, this is a single stick, single sword, single axe, single whatever, and he'd go through all the different variations. He's had so many different instructors and different influences that he would bounce from system to system to system, always giving credit where credit was due. He would say, okay, this came from this guy and this came from this guy. And he's interesting. His father was the secretary of the Farm Workers Union in Stockton, California. So the farm workers, all the Filipinos that came over and worked farms, they had to come to the Inosanto household to get their checks. So I think they paid them in cash. But so the Escrimadors and the Kali people, they all knew each other. And Sebastian Inosanto would say, would you work with my kid Danny? And called him Danny back then. And so he, right from the very start, had access to all the big people in the Filipino martial arts. And obviously he was a big Ed Parker staple there. He was one of Ed Parker's guys at that time, but he was constantly being influenced by the Filipino martial art. So what that did was when you learn from him, you're constantly saying, okay, this is from the Serrata system under Angel Cabalas. This is under the Ilustrísimo system. This is La Costa system. And so even though I never met any of those people, I don't know those Filipino guys, to me, it's all Inosanto martial art, but he would constantly give credit to the people that he got it from. And luckily he's a very organized learner. So everything is written down. Everything is, his copious notes. And I've got some of them I really treasure. And even from the Bruce Lee era, you mentioned politics. Here's a funny little thing. There were a few people that may have exaggerated their involvement in, especially the Chinatown Academy. And that got a reputation. Well, what they didn't know is Guru Inosanto still has all the attendance records.
Wow.
So they kept track. So when they would come out and say, I did this many years or this many classes, and Dan never said anything, bless him. He never spoke up and said, no. But he did one time say, he says, Rick, I still have the records. And he just kind of got that look in his eye. And I thought, oh, I see. They're full of what.
Wow.
So,
that's awesome.
That was interesting.
So at what level and what made you want to start teaching? When did you start and what kind of drew you to it?
I can tell you the day.
Okay. Wow.
So it was at the Degerberg Academy, and Dan was demoing. and people are flying out of the ring. I mean, this is Jeff Amata and Richard Bastillo. I'm trying to think of who all was there, but it's all the guys that I looked up to, that I really thought, okay, this is really something. And he was rolling. I had never seen anything like it. And he stopped in the middle of it, and he gave this lecture about why in the Filipino martial art, why you do it. And he drew a triangle, and he said, you do it. This art is based on love for yourself, love for your family, love for your community. And then he kept drawing triangles and doing different analogies of that. And I stood there and I thought, I just watched the most violent thing I've ever seen. And now you're giving all these thumpers a lecture about love. And I just said to myself, I want to do that. I want to do that. Not having any idea at that point how I was actually going to do it, but right. I just, I wanted to do that. And, it was quite I like I say, I remember to the day when that happened, and that's the start. That was the start. So
then what are the steps then before he allows you to teach? Does he have you like start assisting some demos first? Do you have to get a certain qualification before you can even do that? How does it work with him?
Yeah, he would watch you.
Okay.
So like I said, I started in 78. My first instructor certificate comes along in 82 or 83 or 84, somewhere in there. I'd have to look at the date.
Okay.
And it's still the most treasured certificate for me. Just the first one is good enough. All the other ones I didn't really, I've got them up on a wall somewhere and all that stuff. But just that he gave me the permission to teach, that was good enough for me.
Wow.
And that was just, he really sprung it on me, basically. Walked up to me one day and, here you go. And I don't know, I probably just didn't even know what to say. I don't remember it. I'm sure I stood there with my mouth open like some dope. And then we opened the school. It's interesting that we're doing this interview now. This is 40 years for us. Oh, and wow. We just put out a t-shirt. It really makes me feel old, but it says 40 years of doing this.
That's
so cool. I tell people I started when I was 4. I'm going to keep that lie going.
Nice. Well, okay, then. So thinking back over 40 years, what do you think's changed about your teaching style over the years?
Oh, boy, a lot. Let me see. So I am a seminar-trained martial artist under Dan Inosanto. I did spend some time at the academy, but not much. And I was actually criticized quite a bit, ridiculed for being a seminar-trained instructor.
Oh, okay.
And I actually saw it as an advantage because we would go to seminars all the time, 2-3 a month, and then we'd come home. So you come home from a seminar and you say, well, Monday morning, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go to work on our notes here. And what I think happened is we developed a more solid, what I would call core.
Okay.
And maybe we missed some of the lists, some of the complete lists of techniques or whatever, but we had a better core. In fact, Mr. Inosanto has said that our group had a better grasp of the real basics. They could move. One of the biggest honors, or near honors, I should say, that I had is I got a call. I don't speak to Mr. Inosanto on the phone. Actually, I do now quite a bit, but I didn't then. But it was him on the phone, and so I sit up straight in my chair, and like they can see it, right? And he said, well, my father is going to turn 100, and we'd like your group to come and do the demonstration at the party for the 100th birthday.
Wow.
And I immediately started to sweat, and I'm sure the words, oh my God, came out of my mouth. But his dad didn't make it. He made it to 2 months or 3 months before 100, and then he passed.
Oh, man.
So it never happened. So what I think that is I think he saw that this group moved the way that he wanted people to move.
Okay. And
that was just simply for, we've got a set of information that we acquired at whatever seminar we did. And we're going to spend, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Nobody had a life back then. And we just went to work. That's all. It was just that simple. So
that's awesome. So when did the teaching military and law enforcement and professional athletes, when did that stuff start and kind of what led to each of those?
Oh boy. Well, they're all separate.
Okay.
So athletes came along pretty naturally. Like I said, my father was involved in athletics. I had some contacts. Then my steady training partner for years was a guy named Greg Nelson.
Oh,
and
yeah,
he was involved at the U. What an athlete that kid is, man. Yeah. He still is.
Yep.
Old fart. But he went, a lot of people don't know this. He came to the U and was offered a dual scholarship for either gymnastics or wrestling. They said, we'll give you a full ride, pick your sport.
Wow.
And he was that level of talent, right? So we had kind of connections to different athletes. And then The football coach at the university was Lou Holtz back then. His assistant, the strength and conditioning coach, was a guy that was attached to the Dallas Cowboys, and his brother worked for the Dallas Cowboys. So Bob Ward.
Mm-hmm.
And so John Ward was up here, and they said, well, we're using Dan Inosanto here at the Dallas Cowboys to train our defensive line and other things. And then they called and said, well, you're connected with Dan Inosanto, so why don't you come work for us, et cetera. So that's how that one happened.
Wow. Okay.
Then, oh boy, there's a bunch of these. I'm just so fortunate. Every time I think of all these, I don't know. Well, I'll just say it. I often wonder how a kid from Bloomington, Minnesota ends up meeting Dan Inosanto and training these people and being able to do this. I love what I do. I enjoy it so much. And I'm blessed. I believe that I'm blessed. I think this was all arranged and ordained somehow. And I don't know. I don't see that it happens any other way.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly wasn't my doing.
Well, in your emails to me, you kind of mentioned, and I know it seems like obviously the pro athletes, the well-known people, those always get the highlights. People seem to mention that, but you mentioned that the most important ones to you are teaching the general public. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dealing with high-speed groups is a good resume builder.
Mm-hmm.
I've told people all that because you write FBI or any kind of tier 1 team on there, and boy, now you're a big deal, right?
Right.
But the actual martial art that they do is pretty low level.
Yeah.
It's like, HRT is not doing high level martial art. Your martial art group is much better than they are. But the average person, I learned pretty early that this art can change lives for the better. And that really was the role of martial art. All the fight stories and I did this and I did that and whatever. It's not really, I don't know. I got to a point where if I heard one more fight story, I always felt like I needed a shower or something. It was like, I really don't want to hear that you jump some guy in a bar.
Right.
When you look at it, you train 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and you thumped on some guy that just got off a bar stool. I think you're supposed to win that one.
Exactly.
So, and I started to really value, I saw what Guru Inosanto called distance traveled. And what that meant was, let's say that you get your most talented student comes in, and coming through the door on a scale of 1 to 10, he walks in at a 6 or a 7. You know what I mean? They're just good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get that other student, the one that all the instructors hate to get,
mm-hmm.
where they come in at a 2 or 3, right?
Yep.
Well, the guy that came in at a 6 or 7 improves to 8 or 9, right? The 2 or 3, when they improve to 7, they've actually traveled a greater distance.
Exactly.
Now, they're still, if somebody were to walk in and watch a practice, they probably wouldn't notice that person.
Right.
Maybe. But I just have such great respect for people when they make that kind of change and make that kind of commitment. And it's average people, and, they have to fight through being nervous and intimidated, and, it's physically uncomfortable and all of that stuff. Whereas the real athletes, they came in used to that stuff. They just blend right in. So I really respect the average person that finds martial art, uses it to improve themselves, and they know they're probably never going to see any real combat.
Right. But
it's still a part of their life. So that's what I like.
That's great. I love that. So what led to the creation of MKG University?
Okay, so I have to give credit to a bunch of people for that, actually.
Okay.
But my student in Bournemouth, England, Brendan Westwood, he very politely, bless him, he's passed away a couple of years ago, but he kind of looked at me and said, Sifu, you're going from town to town to town to town to town to town. We should centralize this thing and let's get some of this recorded. Both of those were sort of like, I stood up and I went, oh, well, there's a good idea. Mm-hmm. And then the actual university, as you see it now, is Colton.
Okay.
That's him putting all of that together. And it's interesting. He didn't come out of school with a technology degree. He's learning all this on the fly.
Wow. Good for him.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm so lucky to have the people around me. I'm blessed truly to have the people around me. I mentioned my assistant, Linda. She's wonderful and keeps me functional. And I've had a rough last few years. Mm-hmm. And Colton is the other one where he has done an awful lot for organizing, getting the business going. I was a lousy businessman. And I think most martial artists are probably that.
I would agree.
And it's just not our thing, right? It's not really the focus. And so he's organized the business. And then what was the Minnesota Kali Jun Fan group became the Minnesota Kali group. Then it became the Kali group. Then MKG came along, and I still have a hard time calling it MKG. I call it the Kali group, but it is a much better thing. And then the MKGU is an attempt to. So what we've done is I have a manual, an instructor manual, and I've tried to organize all the information over all these years that I got from Mr. Inosanto and make it progressive so that you have the basics first, and obviously it progresses on through and the skills build on each other. Most people, when they have Mr. Inosanto's curriculum, they just have highlights. They have a bunch of lists and they throw them into a book or a booklet, and it's just a bunch of lists. This idea of progressive improvement isn't really in there. So that's the genesis for the MKGU. So now we say, well, let's get this online, and they can do lesson number 1, lesson number 2, lesson number 3, on up. The latest part of that is an actual instructor curriculum that it takes people who want to be instructors and progresses them in, here's the curriculum we want you to have, here's how to teach it.
Okay.
And our way of teaching it. And I really like it. The MKGU exploded during COVID.
I suppose, yeah.
Because we recorded everything. You were we were joking about technology earlier when trying to get this going. I'm no tech guy, but we closed down. You remember this because you're in Minnesota. The governor said we got to close down, and he set a Wednesday as the date.
Yep. It
was a Wednesday. Well, I showed up the Saturday morning at the Kali group, and I said, "You guys shut it down. This looks serious. Let's close up." And that was Saturday morning. On Sunday morning, they had me teaching online. I never got a day off for COVID.
Wow.
Everybody else got all this time off. I didn't get a day off. Well, what happened there is that thing brought out more information, more insight, we had people teaching on there from all over the world, and everybody was at their best, mostly just out of desperation. We were trying to sink or swim time, and so the U just kept building and building and building. Right now, there's thousands of hours of material on there. I was telling somebody, you could run a school for 100 years off the MKGU.
Wow.
If you just wanted lessons and that kind of thing. So, and I really value it. I wish I had seen it earlier. This we could have been recording for years and years and years. We just didn't.
Right.
And I mistakenly went through a whole period actually where I didn't take notes. That was what we called the functionalization era. And I thought, okay, if I don't have it inside my body, then I don't have it, right? So I don't need the notes because they don't mean anything. Well, that's not true. I should have had the notes. That was dumb. But one of many mistakes. So you may have led a life with no mistakes, but I haven't.
I don't think anyone has. So. And then I know Colton specifically mentioned the international class as being kind of the main part of that and stuff. So is this something that people who have never been involved in Kali or the Filipino martial arts, is anyone going to find value in this?
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
Okay.
We get a lot of that. A lot of people who are crossing systems, they'll be in a system now and maybe they wanted to add weaponry, or maybe the empty hand part wanted to enhance that. The Filipino boxing, the panantukan, is still the most popular thing we have. I know a lot of people think that JKD, Bruce Lee's material, is it's a sidelight now. It's really just kind of an asterisk in the art that we teach. And the Filipino boxing is the deal, that. And now, obviously, it's a lot of, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Thai boxing and that sort of thing. Those are the popular things right now.
Okay.
But we get people crossing over all the time. And what I've been told consistently is that they really like this sense of family. They talk about the MKG family a lot. You guys are like a family. And that was highlighted to me a number of times. My wife got sick and passed. And during that time, that was very important to me. And then COVID, boy, these people just stayed together, and I think people were attracted to that sense of it's a group that really, it is sort of a family. So.
Very cool. Nice. And Colton actually mentioned to me, he actually went and set up a special promo for my listeners. So if any of my listeners want to check it out and try it out, if they use the promo code every day, their first 2 months are only going to be $5 a month. So definitely we want to promote that, and I'll put a link out there when the episode comes out. So hopefully you'll get some people to check it out and see what you have to offer. It sounds like a great deal for sure.
Well, that is a good deal. Yeah. But it's good, if people get a benefit out of it, then I think that's worth it. That's a good thing. And
exactly,
if they're going to get on there and spend their time watching and that sort of thing, because I think it blends with any system. You had mentioned that your instructors were bringing other arts in very early on, and that really is true of martial art. All these different martial art and cultural influences work well together.
Right. Yeah, and that's people who have the open mind and realize that there's no such thing as a perfect style. It's like you have to blend other stuff in. You have to use what works and not use what doesn't, and kind of the whole Bruce Lee philosophy type thing, as a lot of people talk about. But it's there was other people doing it even before him, and people continue to do it after, and it's just kind of the smart way to look at martial arts, in my opinion. So
yeah, absolutely. Bruce was popular just because he had the movie as a platform.
Right.
He was a movie star, but people were doing that, and people said, "Oh, Bruce Lee invented full contact." Tell that to the Thais.
Exactly.
They were. I was just talking to somebody about the UFC, and they said they invented cage fighting. And I said, no, they didn't. You go over Northeast Minneapolis, they had that when my dad was in.
Yep.
So people have been. Now, what changed in that era? Well, a lot changed in that era. They tried to break open what we call the system culture. So, we sort of briefly touched on the fact that if you're training in one system, they didn't really want you training in any other system.
Right.
And then there was also a cultural and racial barrier. So the Chinese community was very upset at Bruce Lee for a lot of reasons. Because you're cocky. But also he was training Caucasians. He was training all sorts of different people. And then he had a Filipino as an assistant. And they just didn't like it. The formal Chinese community hated Bruce Lee. And just that simple. And that's a racial thing. It was still... we're fighting racism now. It was still back then.
So what would you say makes your style different from others?
Just the emphasis.
Okay.
Every style has a certain set of prime qualities they value. You look at Muay Thai, it's conditioning, power-based defense, right? You look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's structure and fluidity on the ground. Every art and system has a certain thing that they value. And in Kali, it's definitely the fluid motion, the flow. And then everything folds into that. It's a lot of study about economy of motion, using the shortest motion for whatever problem you're solving. There's a lot of different types of movement, footwork and angling that I think is their strength. A lot of really innovative thinking about everything from limb destruction to hand trapping to that sort of thing, that they really look at it. That's why it blends with so many arts, because you can just add, if you want just the leverage systems, the sweeping and that kind of thing, and then keep the rest of your art. I told the Thai boxing class one day, because they weren't crossing over at all. They would just go to the Thai boxing class. And I said, no, you guys really like your elbows, and I like them. You guys are good at elbows. If I could put his head right here for you every time, would you be interested? Oh, yeah, we like that. Well, why don't you come to the punishment class then? So yeah, I think the era of Bruce Lee was important to open the art, open people's minds, open everybody to mixing and innovation and all of that stuff. It became a bit of an anchor, or a little bit of something going forward, because people wanted to stay with that, what Bruce Lee was doing. I still hear it.
Right.
People will say, well, that's not traditional Jeet Kune Do. And I'll look at them and say, those two words don't belong in the same sentence.
Exactly.
You don't do that. And so, it was designed for continuing innovation and research, and then most importantly, individualization.
Right.
You have a certain way that your body moves. You have a certain set of life experiences. You have a certain environment that you operate in, and that's individual for everyone. And my only job with this organization is to keep information coming in and make sure that we've got things that everyone can find something in here. They'll find something in here. You get the punchers find interesting punching or striking training. Kickers are here. So we can cater to the different things that people do well, and then try to expand them from there. That's really the deal.
Nice. So what advice would you give someone who contacted you? They've never done martial arts in their life. They're thinking of getting involved. They're kind of just wondering, what should they look for? What should they avoid? Maybe like in schools and instructors.
Obviously, you've seen an awful lot of martial art go under the bridge here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the MMA era. I would remind people that most of us are not 20-year-old thumpers.
Right.
So if that's the school that you walk into is right away sticking gloves on you and you're sparring the first day, I think you're just going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And martial art now, there's a whole other side of this movement. You don't need to get hurt. The idea of going through all that punishment isn't really necessary. And so I would have them be cautious at first, just to look at the training and say, okay, is this harmful or is it helpful? And then I would look at the personality of the group. What used to be, there were certain schools that were real street fight oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think those same schools are MMA oriented. It's the same mentality. It's just transferred over. And if that's their thing, okay, I think it will limit your martial art career.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the physical part, take a look at it. The mental part, do you match or resonate with the instructors? I would also say competency or experience. There's a lot of people to whom, you'll hear this, well, I've been at this 3 or 4 years. Okay. In Kali, by the way, when they say beginner, it means under 5 years.
Okay.
So, and a lot of the traditional martial art was like that.
Mm-hmm.
We live in the era of, was it Mid-America or was it National that brought in the era of 2-year black belts? You can sign a contract for a 2-year black belt. And I understand it as a marketing and business tool, but as when you walk into a school, I would look at, what's their background, how deeply are they involved in the research and all that stuff, so that you have good material to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else? The other thing that has changed over the years, I don't know what you started training in as far as the school, the actual physical school.
Mm-hmm.
We started in a garage.
Okay.
So, these schools now are nice.
Yeah.
You walk in and gee, there's zebra mats everywhere. I don't know how much money I got in zebra mats. Good Lord. And, a lot of schools have weight rooms. A lot of them, it's really, really nice. And so that is a consideration now. If somebody's signing up for a martial arts school, I'd take a look at the physical plant and say,
mm-hmm.
look, does it look nice? Is it clean? Is it, the idea of the old, my Washington Avenue school was when Rocky came out, everybody said, that looks like our school.
Nice.
The first one. Like, yeah, but you guys should stop spitting on the walls, okay?
Yeah, mine wasn't quite that. I think my first one, it was actually a dance school above a police department. It was my first Tung Sudo school. So.
Yep. But that's the way it was, right?
Exactly.
And these sort of mega schools now, we didn't train in anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky if we had a heavy bag. Now they got 18 different kinds of heavy bags. And I was telling somebody the other day, I remember when to buy a pair of focus mitts, you sort of had to know somebody. You had to kind of know where to look. And, maybe you were getting one of the magazines, Inside Karate or Inside Kung Fu,
mm-hmm.
and you had to go there. Now they got them at GNC. So
wow.
Yeah. And it's such a different environment,
mm-hmm.
such a different environment.
So you mentioned MMA a little bit. So I'm just curious then, what are your thoughts on MMA and the UFC, and are you a fan?
I'm a partial fan. I like watching if I can learn something.
Okay.
Because they're going to innovate. Once you make it a game, my thought about it is that the MMA that you see now is the logical outgrowth of the JKD movement.
Okay.
Once they decided to make full contact, a part of the testing and training of the art, they were going to come up with this sooner or later.
Right.
And Eric Paulson said that when he was doing a seminar, and one of the guys says, well, can you define MMA? And he turns around and he goes, it's JKD. Now, anyways, what we were doing is, and he goes right back to work. And so I think for people who are of the age and the mentality that they need that, they need to go and test it. The evolution is pretty good right now. I think, you've obviously, if you take all the arts you've learned, just listening to your background, this is certainly true for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can only go full contact with a part of that.
Right.
Because you'll kill people. I mean, it's these arts are designed to be effective, taking lives. So, so you've got to have rules. It looks like they've come up with a halfway decent set of rules. The actual mentality, if I had any criticism, I would say the crowd, when you go to an MMA show, whether it's UFC or any of the other leagues, I always ask, okay, how many of these people that are here watching, if you threw two swords in the ring, how many people would leave? And that's a real oh, wait a minute, what are we actually watching? So that's one set of considerations. And then my lament is, how about this? I'll just say that I was sad. A lot of the MMA schools and promoters and the people that train, what went away was the traditional respect in martial art. The idea, you grew up with a lot of systems there that had respect at the very core of the art.
Agreed.
And I'll show up at seminars now and I get sized up. You see the big guy in the back and he's looking at me. And I'm like, really, at 64, I got to put up with this.
Wow.
And so I think the respect, and it'll come back. But I think for a while it went away.
Okay.
The money is amazing. I still can't believe, Dana White and these guys, I would never have seen that kind of money in this. Never.
No.
So,
no, I mean, 'cause I used to judge MMA in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And I remember, before, even when the commission first started in Minnesota in 2006, I think it was. But I mean, there were times when people were fighting for beer money. They'd pull people out of the audience. Be like, we need another fighter who wants to make $100. And it's like, wow.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I went to one time and we left actually. And I said, look, if I want to see this, I'll go down to the Caboose on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's
definitely changed over the last 15 years.
Oh, absolutely. And to be fair, the fighters are better.
Yes.
The mixing of the arts is better. One trend that I predicted did happen. So when they first came out, I'm sure you remember, Hoist Gracie comes out and he fights that boxer. Remember the kid with the glove on his right hand?
With the one glove, yep.
Jimerson. So, which was smart because he had a fight coming up, and a boxing match. And his trainer said, okay, if you're going to do this, I'm going to put a glove on your right hand because I don't want you breaking your hand on. And so the other part of that was really smart on the part of the Gracie family is they sent Hoist. And no rip on Hoist whatsoever, because what a great talent he is.
Yes.
But the real talent in the Gracie family is Rickson.
Oh, Rickson's phenomenal.
And so they knew up front that a couple things were going to happen. Most martial artists back then, and still today, are trained to strike moving forward. They're all moving forward. So all he had to do was get under that, take them down, and they got nothing on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you remember, that guy tapped out. There wasn't actually a submission.
Right.
Just Hoist got on top and he started tapping because he didn't know what to do.
Yep.
And I'm sure he felt like he was drowning. I would suspect that had to be the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And but they knew if Hoist were to get beat, then they bring out the big gun, and Rickson would have been the next one.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessary. He went on and I think it was after that he fought Sakuraba and all that, wasn't it?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. But so the MMA thing, I think, is a mixed blessing. I think it's reminded us all about conditioning and contact. I go back far enough to remember when the back fist or back knuckle, as they called it then, was a death blow.
Yep.
So, and that was non-contact tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
There was non-contact karate. Okay, so fast forward to today, we know that's probably not true.
Right.
And so the sense for contact, what the effect of contact is, things that are truly effective in a competition sense. Yeah, I think, and just the appreciation of the athletes. I think the other part that we've not covered is I worked for the NFL for many years.
Okay.
And so I like contact sports. I think it's very interesting. And I think they're getting to that point where it's a legit sport.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal. Don't get me wrong. It's brutal,
right.
But so is hockey.
Yeah.
So is hockey.
True.
You come from Minnesota, you're used to fights on the ice.
Yep.
We were just talking about, you remember this, the old North Stars and Blackhawks games.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't need a puck. They dropped that puck and the gloves would come off and they just go at it. So we trained a lot of NHL players here for years.
Okay.
And, I specifically trained them to fight on the ice. I didn't train them to play hockey.
Wow.
And that's what they wanted. So I got a whole history there, but I'm lucky enough to have actually held the Stanley Cup.
That's cool.
I turned around. The guys that we trained were from Tampa Bay Lightning. this is Ben Clymer and Brett Hedican, and I can't remember who all the guys, and Josh DeWolf. Anyway, and they threw a party after they won the cup over here at Interlochen Country Club. And I was standing there talking to Brian Lawton. He was the guy that hired us, and he was the agent. I literally turned around. Somebody hands me this thing, and I'm staring at my hands, and in it is the Stanley Cup. And then I got in big trouble because there's a guy, he runs around with the cup. It's his job to take care of the cup. Mm-hmm. And he's got white gloves on. And anyways, the players were going to pour champagne in the cup. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, this guy thought I was the instigator here. So he started yelling at me. I'm like, look, I'm just standing here. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's kind of cool. Good story. So who are some names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Oh, gosh, there'd be so many. If you wanted to look way back, people like Masayama, mm-hmm. Yoshiba, boy, there would be a bunch of them. Ip Man. Nice. There would be a whole bunch of those more traditional martial artists. I had a chance, I met, there's two large branches of Aikido. Mm-hmm. And I have a school in Japan, so I spent a lot of time there. And I had a chance to go and sit with one of the branch heads. And it's after Yoshiba died, there was two split offs. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could remember the man's name, but he was really something. A very impressive individual and martial artist. Nice. Who else would go on there? Dan Inosanto is the obvious one in my life. Yep. I guess I would put Bruce. I've said I wasn't a Bruce Lee fan. I guess mm-hmm. I would put Bruce Lee there only because of his actual effect on martial art.
Right. Yep.
He was kind of the streak of lightning that came through and broke everything open. After that, going forward, boy, there's a lot of them. There's so many. We covered that earlier. So much talent out there, and so many really good instructors. All over the world. If I look at the UK, it would be people like Rick Young and Phil Norman, Terry Barnett. There's just so many all over the world.
Hard to narrow that list down, huh?
Boy, it would be a big Mount Rushmore.
That's true. That's good. Well, hey, you named quite a few good names already, so that's good.
Well, and there is a saying, you may have heard it, but it says, we can only go this far because we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
And that's true.
Yes,
that's true. I would never have innovated all of this. We've been handed. I tell my students that we've been handed this martial art. Dan Inosanto shows up in town and just gives you 76, 77 years of training and hands it to you. And I said, you guys, our job is to be appreciative and then to continue the work. Just be thankful.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Nice. So in all your lifelong martial arts journey, is there one philosophy you've learned that kind of rises to the top that's super important to you? You keep coming back to it. You still teach it to your students.
Yeah, I think so. And it's all through the college AKD thing is under Dan Inosanto, is that everybody is traveling their own individual path.
Nice.
And I am tasked with being understanding and helpful along that path.
Okay.
I'm not supposed to judge what anybody else is doing or, try to say this is better than that or that's better than this. It's, we really focus on promoting different cultures, promoting an individual approach to the art so that everybody's doing something different. Mm-hmm. And each of us has to go along that path. It's your only choice.
Right.
So you can want to be, Bruce Lee, or you can want to be one of these people, but you're not.
Right.
Sports offers so many great analogies. We're talking hockey. You can want to be Wayne Gretzky, but you're not. Or Bobby Orr, or whoever your person is, Sidney Crosby, or, football. You can want to be Walter Payton. That was one of my heroes. Yeah. And I learned late in life. My father worked for the NFL as well, and this might just worth putting on here. Is I spoke with him one day, and I said, what you up to? He says, well, I got to go to Chicago. I said, what for? The funeral. I said, what? Yeah, Walter's funeral's today. Well, and then so now the penny's dropping, right? Mm-hmm. It's like,
wow,
you're talking about Walter Payton? Well, over his time with the Vikings, he had gotten to be good friends with Walter Payton.
Okay.
And so my first reaction was, well, wait a minute, where was I? I'm a fan of this guy. Anyways, but there would be a guy, Walter Payton had his own way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And people tried to be like him, but they couldn't. So I think martial art is like that. So I would say that, as an overall philosophy, it's that each of us is traveling our own path. And, I have a picture of Dan with that written on it in a poem that he wrote. And that, our job as instructors is to, I should say this, hopefully we lead by example.
Right.
So your students should see that you are still doing and training and doing what you can, but also you sound like a guy who's still got a good balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've seen martial art improve so many lives, but also ruin a few,
Definitely.
just because they get too obsessed and too over the top,
Mm-hmm.
and then pretty soon families break up and whatever else. I mean, it can be a negative if you let it.
That is true.
So,
great answer. I love that. All right. I got a few fun ones to wrap it up. So first of all, do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Oh gosh, I just went through my books. Yeah, Filipino Martial Arts by Dan Inosanto.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess that's the predictable answer. I wish I had something cooler than that.
Hey,
but
that's
I
a
just
great
love,
book.
I love looking at him. And then he had a couple other ones, So, but yeah, there you go.
Okay. So this one you may not have an answer for. I don't know if were you ever a video gamer? Do you have a favorite martial arts video game?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
Okay. That one's about 50-50. Some people played and some people didn't. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm older than that.
Okay.
So,
how about a favorite martial arts TV show?
boy, TV show. I thought Kung Fu was pretty cool.
Nice. Okay.
David Carradine back then.
Yep.
I'll tell you who I think a lot of. It's not a TV show, it's a movie star. It's Jackie Chan.
Oh yeah.
I think he's he was really the next Bruce Lee.
Agreed.
And the thing they did well with Jackie Chan is, I don't know about you, but I think he's hilarious.
Yes.
He's got to be one of the funniest. If you had to list him as, is he a martial artist or a comedian? The answer is yes.
Exactly. Yep.
He took martial art to a whole new level in the movies. And I actually would rate his action scenes higher than Bruce Lee's.
Mm-hmm.
By quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. So then, did you ever watch the TV show Martial Law in the 90s with Sammo Hung?
I saw a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was one of Jackie's students and stuff. He was good friends with Jackie. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So it's a lot of that same style, a lot of the same humor type, Jackie Chan fighting styles and stuff. So.
Huh. Yeah. No, I didn't see a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. All right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Yeah, is Rush Hour a martial arts movie? It's not really, is it?
I've had at least 2 guests name that one, so I would say it counts.
Okay. I think I probably should say one that my instructors are in. Dan Inosanto did a few movies. He did the one with Burt Reynolds, and then, obviously Bruce Lee's movies.
Yep, Game of Death.
I thought it was cool that Bruce had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in one movie.
Yep.
So any of those would be good.
Okay.
But yeah, I think any of the Jackie Chan ones, I think Rush Hour, I can't remember the name of the other ones, but yeah, those were really entertaining to me. I don't really watch movies. The one thing I should say about martial art movies is I don't watch movies to learn anything about martial art.
Right.
If the things they do that they're calling martial art fit with the plot, perfect.
Right.
That's perfect. And that's what it's supposed to do. So.
Okay, cool. Final question. This one, it doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. It can be any movie. Do you just have a favorite movie fight scene?
Movie fight scene. Boy, we could go back. Gosh, that's a hard one. There's an interesting one. This one you'll have to go look up in a history book. This is going to show how old I am.
Okay. There
is a fight scene between, is it Andre the Giant or the one before him? Anyways, there's a fight scene between him and Carl Weathers in Force 10 from Navarone. Is that the one? Or Guns of Navarone, or one of those?
Okay.
It's a World War II movie. And they end up out in the woods, and the big guy is he's fighting for the Germans, but he's a Russian. Part of it. And they end up with a fight scene between knives and then what turns out to be big logs that they just pick up in the woods. Okay. And it's awesome. It's pretty cool fight scene. I will have to check that out. The other one that just came to my mind as I said that would be the baseball bat scene from The Warriors. Oh man, I forgot. I love The Warriors. Yeah, great movie. There was that team, the gang was with the baseball uniforms on, and that baseball bat fight scene I thought was pretty cool. I remember, I'd have to go back and look at it. It's probably hokey now that I think about it. But. Yeah, a lot of those don't hold up, unfortunately, but that's okay. Right. As long as you in your head, as long as it's good, that's the important thing. Right. There's a good impression back.
Exactly. Well, Rick, I just want to say thank you, man. This has been so much fun. I loved hearing your story, and I definitely, next time if you do a seminar in Minnesota, I'd love to come check it out if I can make it work in my schedule. It'd be a blast.
Well, you're welcome here anytime. And again, I'd just like to thank the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
My assistant Linda basically keeps me functional and is a gem. Also one of the best martial artists you'll ever see.
Nice.
And, I mentioned Colton and the guys at the gym, they really, this thing's not me, it's them. And I at this stage, I just kind of follow along and they point me where to be. And then I just do my thing. So,
nice.
But I'd like to just thank all the people. And then thank you for doing this. I appreciate you. You're a very open-minded guy and boy, you definitely experienced. So that really helps.
I love talking martial arts, so but my two loves were martial arts and radio and talking to people. So kind of worked out nice. And like I said, I'll put links for the the Minnesota Cali group website and the MKG University website. And just once again, I want to mention that promo for the listeners. If they use the promo every day, your first 2 months are only going to be $5 a month. So it's really a good deal. But once again, seriously, just thanks for your time, and I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And again, I apologize for being late. I literally got stuck in a lake, but I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.